Hello everyone, welcome to CodeSpot. I'm Abarna, I'm a web developer, and today we are going to see how to create a to-do app using React.js. Let's see how this works. So basically you can add items to the to-do list, how much ever you want. And then you can edit the items in the list. And then we'll see how to delete items in the list. And finally, we will see how to animate the items in the list. I have uploaded the code in GitHub. So you have this README page where I have given the commands that we are going to use in this project. And go into the source folder. You can see all the list of files that we are going to create in this project, so you can follow along. And as a bonus, I'm going to teach you how to publish this React.js app in the GitHub. So let's get started. First up, open the command prompt. I've cleared the screen. Now give your desired folder wherever you want to create the React app, and use the command called create React app and give the app name. Oh, there's no capital letters there, and there you go. Now go into the folder of your project, and before I start the project, I'm going to open this up in the Visual Studio Code. And there you can see our project files have been created. Now type in npm start to run the React.js project. The React.js opens up in the local host. The links are provided in the command prompt. Now that our app is set up and running, let's get on with the coding. First up, go to the app.js file. This is where the code has been given. So before we get started, I'm going to give you an introduction about functional components. To create a functional component, you need to create a function with the props parameter and then define your return statement. Inside that, you can give the HTML template that you want to display it on your screen. So we're going to do just the same and see how it works. Now I'll delete all the code and replace it with the h1 tag that says hello world. Now you can see the hello world is displayed in the browser. But in this React app, we are going to use some states, so we need to convert this to a class component. You can create a class component by saying class name extends react.component, and it will have a render method, and you can paste the same return function right into this. So let's go ahead and do that. Class app extend react.component, render function. Inside I'll copy paste the return function. Here I'll change it to hello again so you can see that it works. Alright, now let's delete the h1 and start with the coding. Starting up with the form tag that has the input field and the button. I'm going to start with the header. In that, I'm going to give a form with an ID to do form. I'm going to give a text input. I'll give it a placeholder called enter text, and then a button type submit. Now I click save. The form is getting displayed on our browser. Now let's go ahead and style this. Go to src app.css and let's start styling. First, to the body, I'm going to give the background color as hashtag 9266FF. Now I'm going to go back to the app.js and enclose the entire form under a div class name called app. So it will be easy for us to style the entire to-do form. Alright, moving on to app.css. I'm going to style the entire app. First up, I'm going to give the background color as 3F31360. I'm going to give a min height as 500 pixels and width as 400 pixels. I'm going to give the margin as 40 pixels auto. That means the top and bottom are 40 pixels and it is horizontally centered because it's auto. There you go. Now if I enlarge the screen, you can see it is horizontally centered. Alright, moving on, let's go and design the input fields. First, I'm going to set the background color as RGB 27, 112, 137. I'm going to set the border 0, and then I'll set the width to 200 pixels, height 50 pixels. I'll give a padding 0, 20 pixels, and then some margin 20 pixels. So you have some space in the placeholder, that's because of the padding. Although the placeholder is not visible, so let's go ahead and style that. I'm going to give that a font color of RGBA 255, 255, 255 and 0.5. I'm going to set the font size as 18 pixels and I'm going to give the border radius as 10 pixels, so it has curved edges. I'm going to give the font color as white. Now when I click on the input button, you can see an outline around the input element. For that, I'm going to use the focus selector and I'm going to say outline none. Now when I click on it, there's no outline. Now let's style the button. I'm going to refer to to-do button, to-do form button. I'm going to start with height 50 pixels, width 80 pixels. I'll give the border radius as 5 pixels for the curved edges. I'm going to set the border as 0. I'm going to give the background color as RGB 202, 156, 24. So it's slightly yellowish. And then I'm going to give the cursor as pointer, so when I point on there, it turns to a hand symbol. I'm going to give the font weight as bolder. I'm also going to give the font color as white. Looks good. Now I'm also going to do the same outline none for the button. I'm just going to add that to the input field. Alright, with that the design is over. Let's go ahead and start with the basic operations of a to-do form. Adding items to the to-do list. So basically, when I'm entering a text, I call a function called handle input. And when I click on the add button, we'll call a function called add item. In handle input method, we have a variable called current item, in that the text is going to be the text that you are entering in the input field and the key is going to be the current date because the key has to be unique. So the text that you are entering gets stored in this object. And during the add item, the current item object will be stored in a list of array. And finally, we'll display this list below. So basically, while you're entering, you are handling the input by storing it in a variable, and then when you click on add, it gets added to a list of array. So let's start coding this logic. Open up the app.js, and first we're going to start with constructor. We'll call the base class with super, and then I'm going to define the state. The state will have two variables. One is the items array And the second one is the object for current item that stores the text and the key. Initially the text and key are empty value. Now I'm going to link the input field and the current item by setting the value of the input field to current item dot text, and then I'll set the on change to this dot handle input method. And on submit of the form, that is when I click on the add button, we'll call the method this dot add item. Notice that the variables and the methods are enclosed in curly braces because that is part of JSX when we are including a JavaScript variable or a method inside HTML file. Alright, now let's go and define these methods, starting with handle input method. To change the state variable, you need to use a method called setState. Inside that is an object where you can give the variables that you want to update. You cannot update a state directly, you should use the setState method instead. So I'm going to give the current item text as e.target.value, the value that we enter in our input field, and then the key is going to be date.now. Now I'm going to define the add item method. So notice when you click on the add item, the page gets refreshed. This is the default behavior of a button. To prevent this, we need to say e.preventDefault. This will prevent from the element's default behavior our operations instead. Now you can notice when I click on the add button, the page doesn't get refreshed. Now let's first get the current item and store it in a variable called new item. And just for now, I'm going to log this item in our console so we can see if the item is retrieved properly. So now I'll enter some text. Immediately I get an error thrown. It says cannot read property set state of undefined. It says this is not recognized, it is undefined. Seems the handle input method have lost its context. This is because this keyword does not point to the class automatically. We need to bind it separately to the constructor. So I'm going to bind this by saying this dot handle input dot bind of this. Oh, it's outside this dot state, inside the constructor there. Again, we need to do the same for add item method too. Now let's give some text and click on add button. Now if you inspect element, go to console, you can see an object is returned and you have the object value, the text and a key value. If you're wondering why there are two objects, I hit on enter and then hit on add button. So basically I click on add twice, so that's why. Now let's move on with the coding. Let's go to add item, and first up I'm going to check if the new item.text is not empty, and then I'm going to add that to our list. So the first parameter basically unpacks all the items in the list and converts them into individual items, and the second parameter is added to the list. If you want to learn more about this, Google about destructuring assignment. You can understand more clearly then. Now let's update our state variable by calling the setState method and set the items to the new items array, and I'll set the current item back to empty values. Now we need to create the list. So to create the list, I'm going to create a new file called Item Dot Css and another new file called Item Dot Css. In the items.js, I'm going to start with import React from React. I'm also going to import the items.css for styling. I'm going to create a functional component called listItems and just return some text here saying from listItems.js, and also export that saying export default listItems. Now I'll go back to app.js and start with importing the listItems.js. Then I will include that below our header file, just like that, and the text is displayed in our app.js. Now let's remove that and start coding. First off, I'm going to get the props.items and store it in a new variable called item, so it will be easier for us to access. Pass the listItems to our listItems component. These listItems will be received as props. So now I'm going to use a function called map. This is basically like a for loop. Go ahead and research about this. So it will loop through each and every items and execute our function and store it in the variable called listItems. So for each item, I'm going to create a div class called list, and I'm going to set the key as item.key to uniquely identify them. Now inside this div element, I'm going to give a paragraph tag that displays the text property, and I'm going to display this list items inside the return statement of the functional component. Now let's click save and start typing the text. Now when I add, it throws an error saying that new items cannot be used before initialization. Let's go back to our app.js and check what is it. Oh, it's not new items, it is new item. Oh, my bad. Alright, now let's go and type in a text. And there you go, the text is added down. Alright, let's go and style them. Let's go to list_item.css and start with .list. I'm going to give the color as white. I'm going to give the width as 300 pixels. I'm going to give background color as #BF07AC. I'm going to give the height as 50 pixels. I'm going to give margin 20 pixels auto. And I'm going to give the border radius 5 pixels. Now for the paragraph tag, I'm going to give the padding as 10 pixels. Now let's give the delete button. For the delete button, I'm going to use the font awesome icons. So go to the website. I'm going to give the links all in the description box below. So this is the GitHub file. They have given all the details about it. So to quickly go about it, go to my GitHub profile link. I have given all the links to it. Just copy and paste it in your command prompt. Once that is done, we'll start the application. Now time to import all the Font Awesome icons. Quickly import the Font Awesome SVG core. And this is the icon that I want, the trash icon, so I'm going to import that specifically and I'm going to add that to the library so we can use it later. In the list items.js, I'm going to import the Font Awesome. And I will give Font Awesome trash icon inside a span. I'm going to give this a class name as far icons so that you can style it later. And I'll mention the icon as trash. Now when I click on the text, you can see the delete button right next to it. I want the delete button next to the text, so actually I want to include the span inside the paragraph tag, so it will be next to our text. So now when I hit save, you can see the delete button is next to our text. Now let's go ahead and install that. I'm going to say position absolute. I'm going to give the right as 10 pixels. It goes all the way towards the right of the screen. So let's give the parent class position relative and then it's right of the paragraph text. Now I'll set the cursor to pointer. Now I'll go with far icons. I'm going to give the margin as 0.5 pixels. Font size as 15 pixels. It's look good and clear now. Now let's move on with the functionality of deleting items in the list. First, I'm going to give the onClick property and I'm going to give the method as props.delete item. So here I'm using arrow functions to pass the reference and I'm going to pass the key value here to uniquely identify which item we want to be deleted. And of course it doesn't work if we do not pass this in our base class. So let's define the function here. And now let's define the delete item function in our app.js file. I'm going to use a property called filter that would filter all the items that meets the condition that we give. So basically it will filter all the items that key doesn't match and then store it in a variable called filter items. And now I just have to update the state and React.js will take care of the rest. Now when I click on delete, nothing happens. So let's go to the console and check what's the problem here. It says encountered 2 children with the same key. So let's go to our list items.js and check, because here we have mentioned the key and it is a string. It is supposed to be a JSX expression, so I need to enclose them with curly braces. Instead I've enclosed them with double quotes, so it's considered as string. and now if we check again, it is not working. So let's go to the app.js and check the function. Again, here I have given item. Actually, it's supposed to be item dot key because we are comparing the key. Oops, I make a lot of mistakes. I apologize. Now you click on the delete button. Well, now if you click on the delete button, it works perfectly fine. Alright, moving on to editing items in the list. So if you notice here, we cannot edit a text in the paragraph tag. So we need to change this into an input field. And with the magic of CSS, we'll make sure it looks all nice and clean. Let's start with giving the input type text and putting the text inside the input field. I'm also going to mention the ID as the key value so we can uniquely identify that. Now let's go to style.css and quickly style this up. I'm going to give the background color as transparent. I'm going to give the border as 0. I'm going to give the font color as white. I'll give the font size as 18 pixels. Now we need to make the outline none for the input as well. So there is no blue outline appearing there. But even now you're unable to edit the value. So let's go to the console and see what's the problem here. It says you provided a value prop to the form field without an onChange handler. That means it would be read-only file. Basically, the user provided value to the input fields and the user did not give any onChange attribute. Therefore, it is a read-only input field. It makes sense. So let's go ahead and define the onChange property. During onChange, again I'm going to use the arrow function. Here I'll call the reference of the function that I want. I'll pass the value and the key value as the parameters. Again, it wouldn't work if I do not pass this value in our base class. So first I'll do that. And then I will define this function. It receives the value and the key. I will loop through each and every item using the map function. Check if the item key is equal to the key that is provided in our function and change the text to the text value. Now I will update this state with the new items. Now we'll refresh and see if this works. Before that, I need to bind this to our constructor file. Now we'll refresh and see if it works. I'll enter a text. Now I am able to change the value, so it's working. Great, let's test again, and you are able to edit the values separately. Now I can also delete it. Alright, finally let's learn how to animate the list items. So when I enter or delete, you can see there is a bit of animation there. So to do this, it is very easy. All you have to do is install React Flip Move. Import that in your list items.js because that is where we are going to use it. Import Flip Move from React Flip Move. And all you have to do is just enclose this inside the the flip move tag. Set the duration whichever you want and use this easing attribute to define the animation function and put the list item inside this. And since React.js is case sensitive, you should give the exact name there. So it's capital F. Now when I enter the text, you can see there's a bit of animation there. When I delete it, there's an animation. I'll change it to 300 so it'll be a little bit quick. Well, there you go. Alright, perfect. With that, we have completed the coding for To-Do app. Now finally, as promised, we will see the bonus tip on how to deploy React app in GitHub profile. So go to your profile, your GitHub profile, and click on the new icon towards your left. Give your repository name. I'm going to give React in GitHub demo. And I'm going to create repository. You do not have to do anything. It should be an empty repository as far as I know. Now go into your code, go to package.json, and here create a property called homepage and give the value in similar format, https:// your username.github.io and your project name. Now scroll down to the scripts property. You need to give two properties here. One is pre-deploy, set it to npm run build, and another one is deploy and set it to gh-pages space -d space build. Now go to your command prompt, stop the execution, go to the GitHub link that I have provided and copy the commands there, paste it. Here I would say set URL. Before you set the URL, you need to add it, so change it to add, and then you set the URL. The URL must be provided in this format, http://github.com/your username/your project name. Once you have done with that set URL, you need to go with npm run build to build the project. It takes some time to build, and once it is completed, go ahead and hit npm run deploy. I got an error saying that the command is not recognized. So let's go ahead and install that, gh_pages. Once it is completed, you can again give npm run deploy. And once it is published, it would say published. Now go to your package.json and copy the link that you have given in your home page and paste it in your browser to see your running code. As you can see, the code is up and running. We have successfully deployed the React.js application in GitHub. Let's test it. Yes, it worked. With that, the tutorial is completed. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button to support my channel, and don't forget to subscribe to CodeSpot for more such videos. Thanks for watching.